throughout DuPage County. DuPage County Health Department reports that almost 20% of DuPage County residents have been fully immunized. That means 2 shots if it's Pfizer, Moderna, or 1 shot if it's Johnson & Johnson. DuPage County also reports that almost 60% of the DuPage County population over 65 has been fully vaccinated. As of April 5, the 7-day positivity rate in Region 8, which is the region we're in, which includes DuPage County and Kane County, had a rolling positivity rate of 6.5%, which is up from 3.7%, which I gave during my last report. DuPage's rolling positivity rate by itself is up from 3.7% in March to also 6.2%. So it's a little lower than the Region 8. As of April 5, Hinsdale Hospital reported that there is 1 person under investigation for COVID and 5 people in the hospital for COVID. As of April 5, the DuPage County website reported 1,436 cases of COVID in Hinsdale, which is an increase of 106 from my last report. Since the start of this pandemic, there have been 53 deaths reported in Hinsdale in DuPage County, and that's unchanged from my last report. As of April 5, the Cook County website reports 179 COVID cases in Hinsdale, which is an increase of 15 since my last report. Since the pandemic started, there have been 8 deaths in the Cook County portion of Hinsdale, and that number has remained unchanged since January of this year. Next item on the agenda is if I can find it, the Arbor Day Proclamation. So this is proclamation regarding Arbor Day. Whereas in 1872, J. Sterling Morton proposed to the Nebraska Board of Agriculture that a special day be set aside for the planting of trees. And whereas this holiday called Arbor Day is observed with the planting and celebration of trees, and whereas trees in our village increase property values and enhance the economic vitality of business areas and beautify our community, and whereas the village places a high priority on tree preservation, dedicating financial resources and qualified personnel to tree preservation activities, and whereas the village of Hinsdale has been recognized as a Tree City USA for the 29th year in a row by the National Arbor Day Foundation in recognition of the village's commitment to tree preservation. Now, therefore, I, Tom Colley, village president of the Village of Hinsdale, do hereby proclaim April 30th, 2021 as Arbor Day in the Village of Hinsdale, and urge all residents to support efforts to protect our trees and woodlands and to support our village's tree preservation program. That takes us to citizens petitions. Anybody on the line? Brad?
Yeah, we have a number of people on the line. I'm not sure if they want to speak. Let me unmute them.
Okay, so you unmute them. Anybody on the line who wishes to speak to any matter on the agenda or off the agenda? If you have something that's on the agenda and you want to speak at that point, you can speak then. But if you want to talk now, there's an opportunity now and at the end of the meeting.
Okay, I wanted to speak to the 33 South Garfield property. I'm the architect, but I can wait until we get to that.
Yeah, that would make more sense if we do it then. And if you please remind us to speak up if
okay,
we don't.
thank you.
But yeah, I think it makes more sense to have comments from people who have specific items on the agenda when we take up those items. It just makes
Sure,
it.
thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, that takes us to the first read items. And Jerry, I think you start off.
Yeah, I got a couple items. So the first one is they're both housekeeping items. So the first one is that with the retirement of Daryl a couple months ago, we need to appoint a alternate delegate to IRMA, and so village manager Kathleen Gargano is our primary alternate. And so the proposal is that we appoint Shelley Henn, who is our HR generalist, to fulfill that role. So unless this would be a natural consent agenda item, unless there's discussion or issues with it.
Sounds like consent agenda to me.
Okay, so the second one, 7B, This is more substantive, but very routine. So annually, we update the village pay plans, which specify the rates and minimum, maximum salaries, hourly minimums, maximums by roles. There are a number of roles in the plan. The rates, the practice is to increase those in line with the increases negotiated with the Fraternal Order of Police. And so that's 2.5%. That's what's in the plan that's been proposed. There have been a couple of roles that are being retitled, but no additional roles. And the retitling is just kind of cleaning up the terminology.
Any questions on that from any of the trustees? Okay, that sounds like a consent agenda item 2.
Yep.
Okay, that takes us to you, Neil.
Yes, okay. Item 7C is to approve the award of a bid to Oak Brook Mechanical for the replacement of the boiler replacement, or a boiler at the Hinsdale Police and Fire Department. This boiler, a leak was detected last year, which couldn't be repaired. We budgeted $125,000 to replace the boiler. The low bidder is Oak Brook Mechanical. They were $3,750 over the budgeted amount. However, we're applying for a rebate of $10,000 from the NICOR Gas Energy Efficiency Program. So if we get that rebate, that will lower the cost of the project, and it'll be under budget by $6,250.
And how certain are we we'll get that rebate? Do we know?
It's George Peluso speaking. We're very confident we're going to get the rebates back from NICOR for this.
Okay,
It's an energy efficient system, so we've checked with NICOR prior to bidding it out, and it looks like we'll be getting the rebates back once the project's completed.
okay. Any questions on that? Anybody see a reason why it shouldn't go on the consent agenda? Okay. Okay, Neil?
Okay, let's move to the 8th Street Reconstruction Project. Here, we're suggesting awarding the contract for the 8th Street Reconstruction Project to J. Narduli Concrete Incorporated on the amount not to exceed $1,340,000. Now, a few things to unpack on this one here. First of all, if you look at the first page of the RBA, you'll see, well, first of all, we were talking about whether we should do this in asphalt and concrete. We discussed this a little bit, and we'll discuss it a little bit more today. Narduli for asphalt bid $1,340,000. However, G&M Cement bid $1,481,000, which is just $141,000 more to do it in concrete rather than asphalt. Now, there's an additional $50,000 involved because you need more money for construction observation when you're doing concrete. So at the end of the day, you're going to have $192,000 more to asphalt. Now, but the whole reason we're kind of talking about this is that G&M really gave us a very good price on the concrete. If you'll notice the engineer's estimate at the top of those two columns there, they had estimated the concrete would be an additional almost $500,000, $471,000. And if it was that, we wouldn't even be talking about this. But let me just lay out a couple of things regarding pluses and minuses on concrete versus asphalt. With concrete, if you look on page 2, the staff did an analysis on what the cost would be over 45 years, because in 45 years with asphalt, you would have to redo it 3 times. Whereas concrete, you'd have to do some minor patching, from time to time. But the 45-year cost difference for asphalt versus concrete is $371,000 in favor of doing it in concrete. And that's even using 2021 costs for the resurface and patching, which those costs are certainly going to go up. So that's a plus for concrete. 8th Street is kind of a key cross street. It's not a highly used street in like Garfield or Hinsdale Avenue or Chicago Avenue or something like that. But it's still kind of an important street to get across Hinsdale on the south side of town. Now, turning to asphalt, first of all, it's going to be $192,000 less. And kind of what our standard procedure has been since we started the MIP is when we're redoing streets, even if they're old busted up concrete streets, we've been reconstructing them in asphalt. For instance, North Washington Street, North Lincoln, North Vine Street. That's what happened. We started reconstructing that, the old concrete street, and put asphalt in there. And that's been kind of our SOP. And the reason that we've been able to do a lot of the MIP projects is because we haven't spent all that money up front. So that's kind of where we're at.
Anybody have thoughts on the asphalt versus concrete?
Well, yeah, let me dive into a couple things. So one, I'm really happy we got the two numbers because we've always talked kind of high level about how much more concrete would be. And it always felt like it was a bit fuzzy. And so it's really good to have these data to work with, especially for such an important project. My takeaway is this, this difference puts it right on the edge. And reading this, okay, I would tend toward the lower long-term cost, the lower total lifetime cost. But over a 45-year life, $370,000, it matters, but it's not as big as I thought it would be. The immediate savings is also not as big as I thought it would be for asphalt. So, I guess where I come out is, what are the pros and cons that don't just show up in the numbers? I would think one, okay, we may have had a practice of turning everything into asphalt. I'm not sure that was we never did it based upon numbers. So I think it was based upon probably an assumption that asphalt would be cheaper. The other thing would always be to just replace it with whatever is there if we can do it. And I don't know, I'll just put out the question. I mean, are there other more qualitative factors that would make us prefer one or the other? And I just don't know what those might be.
Well, this is my take on it from just being around for a while. But first of all, I don't think we've ever taken the position that if a street was concrete to start with, we would keep it concrete. I think what we did is at any street we were redoing, I think the default position was asphalt. And then we would consider using concrete based upon the usage of the street. And from what I learned from Dan, is that even a street that has heavy car usage doesn't get the same workout that a street does that has a lot of truck usage. In fact, much of the repairs we had to do to streets were because of people building new homes having heavy truck traffic over the streets. So in my view, the deterioration is mostly due to truck traffic, not car traffic. So my thought is that I don't know that there's a lot of truck traffic on 8th Street. It seems like it's got more than your average street in car traffic, but I think the street is not going to suffer the way Garfield would or Chicago Avenue would, which we've done in concrete. Also, to me, I'm a lawyer, not a businessman, but I've been around financial matters as part of my work. I don't think any business person looks to a 45-year payout. I think that business people look to something that will pay back in 3 to 5 years. And it seems to me that if you look at this chart that they prepared, there's about roughly $190,000 difference between concrete and asphalt today. You would only recoup that cost in 15 years. And so 15 years payback just doesn't seem to me to justify the difference. I'm also somewhat concerned about to the extent that we don't have a policy that is somewhat firmly articulated as to what's concrete and asphalt, that every street that comes up in the future, people are going to want to do is concrete. And I think that it should only be the major thoroughfares that are concrete. But that's my view. And I also think $190,000 in our pocket now that we would save by doing this in asphalt is we can pave a lot of streets for $190,000.
Just a couple of comments, Tom, just to add to what you said. So the $192,000 this year on the MIP portion of the streets you're going to repair, like Maple Street and a portion of West 8th Street, we're going to spend about $600,000 or $700,000 just on a regular MIP maintenance. So this $192,000 is almost a third of that. $192,000 will let you repave about, I think, almost a half a mile. I think that's right, George, isn't it? So that's another way to look at the $192,000. Now, some of the other things we've done with, it's not real easy to say, well, we're going to do the lesser streets in concrete, or I mean, asphalt, not concrete. There's been some instances where I think on East 7th Street, there was a portion we repaved, I think, between County Line and maybe Oak. And we did that in concrete, even though that's not a widely used street, but the rest of the street is concrete. So just for continuity's sake, it seemed to make sense to do that. So there's, you can't have those hard and fast rules. But, $192,000 is $192,000.
And I wonder if you take the 371,580 that we would save in 45 years and discounted that to current dollars, what you'd get. I think it'd be less than $190,000.
So Tom, on that, I did the math, and to make these kind of like a break-even analysis, when you take the time accounts over 45 years, you get into an IRR, or a net present value factor of 4%, which is right where I'm in line with what Jerry said. It's very close to being indifferent, which was surprising to me. However, my opinion is the flexibility that this provides us with $192,000, for lack of a better term, in pocket today, I think we've just got better uses for it.
Right. And as Neil pointed out today, that the only reason that we're even talking about this is because the numbers are so close. And I think that's largely a result of the current construction market. I think in most years, the concrete would be about $500,000 more, and it would be a no-brainer. And it's closer to the line, obviously, because the costs are closer together.
Yeah. So, I mean, George and Dan said the guys are really hungry right now, which is probably partly due to the pandemic and everything.
Right.
So you might not see that good number again.
Yeah, just a question, first of all, before I express my views. Didn't some of our other projects come up under budget? So that
They did. The Chicago Avenue was 600,000. Yep.
Right. So we've got a little more money to play with in terms of our construction budget. I guess what I'd like to say here is that if there ever were a cross street in South Hinsdale to pave in concrete, I think this is the one. I think this is the major, through street that people use to get across town if they're south of the tracks. People do not go into 55th because of the traffic and the stoplights. And 8th Street and 6th Street are the only streets that go all the way through from 83 to County Line. As you know, 6th Street is partially brick, and it's also a very narrow street between Garfield and Grant, which makes it less attractive. In addition, we just put in place a couple more stop signs on 6th Street, which again is going to discourage people from using 6th and is going to encourage them to use 8th Street. Whether it's going over to County Line to go to VEC or the Oak Street Bridge, if someone's going the other direction to go to the community house, for people who live in Southern Hinsdale or are going to a place like the community house, 8th Street is the road that's used. So I'm not suggesting that every road that comes up be paved in concrete, although I think we could all say that concrete is superior to asphalt. But I think particularly here, given the very attractiveness of the bid, that in this case, I think it makes sense to pave 8th Street in concrete.
Let me just push back on two things you said. One, it seems to me that if you look at projects that came under budget, and then you add up all the under budgets, and then you say that's like, free money that we can use, you've kind of, in my mind, eviscerated the budgeting process, because then you're using it as an undifferentiated whole of money that we can just use. It seems to me that you have to look at these projects one-off, not count the dollars you've saved in other projects in order to be faithful to the budgeting process. That's number one.
I mean, Tom, in all fairness, when we do that all the time, where we talk about how to fund it and we say, oh, there's some other money left.
Others say that. You will never hear me say that.
Okay.
Say that.
We
And
have
in fact,
memos all the time that.
right,
make
I know, and I always call the staff and I say, when you say this is over budget, but that's okay because we saved some money somewhere else, you ask the staff, I call them up and say, that's not thinking correctly about budgets. We think about these things, because otherwise it's just a lump of money, because then it becomes, we used to have a guy in George's group that would always say that, I save money over here so I can spend more money over there. And then I think you get away from the discipline of budgeting. That's number one. Secondly, I agree that this is close to the line for two reasons. One, we've got a very good price for concrete versus what we thought we would get. So that it is more of a horse race. I also agree that 8th Street is more of a thoroughfare than most streets. If we were talking about, my street, which is a cul-de-sac, we wouldn't be having this conversation. But so I do agree that this comes closer to line. But the other point that I push back on is, even though it's more heavily used, I'm not sure that you still wouldn't have 15 good years out of that street in asphalt like you would in concrete, and you wouldn't have any problems. So given that you're going to get 15 good years out of the street, whether it's asphalt or concrete, that's where I have trouble. I mean, it's not as though it's going to, you're going to have to repair it in 2 years or 5 years. We've got 15 years.
Tom, where are we? I know we're talking about difference from budget and so forth, but I mean, there's other things we spend money on, and revenues are down in other areas because of the pandemic and everything. So
we deferred lots of things. One of the reasons we deferred everything for last year, other than what was absolutely necessary. Isn't that right, Kathleen? We deferred all the maintenance from last year.
All the maintenance, yeah.
Yeah. Which is about what, $300,000 is my recollection. You're on mute.
We did no maintenance for 2020, so that is something, and I remember the capital plan, I'll just leave it at that. We did no maintenance for 2020, so that's something that we'll be looking at to piggyback for next year, because we would want to do that work, or maybe even later this year, given that the budget numbers are so good. And there are also some funding that we were relying on that we won't be able to use this year. An example is the grant from Mazaki in the amount of like $255,000 that hasn't been released yet.
Right.
So that was in our original projections, but again, there have been some savings in the fund, but we'll be okay. But to your point of having money in our pocket, we haven't even gone out to bid on Chicago Avenue for the paving, and that's not going to happen until June.
What was the maintenance we deferred? My recollection was like 350,000. Is that about right?
Allison or George, do you have that number off the top of your head?
What was that MIP stuff? I mean, is that the 600,000?
Yeah, it was the same bid as this year. It was about 600,000.
600,000.
Last year.
Okay, 600,000.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then we added Felipe in this year.
Yep.
And Matt, this is a close call. I'm not disputing you. I'm just pushing back on some of the things you said, but this is closer of a call than I would have thought.
Well, since it came up, Chicago Avenue, what's that going to be?
Asphalt.
That's a road that we should be doing.
Good, yeah, good question,
if
right?
we can.
I mean, that has lots of truck traffic.
George, do you want to address that? George and I had that same conversation.
Right.
Go ahead.
The West Chicago project is a grant-funded project, and most of the grant funding is eligible for resurface only. So that's just going to be a grind and resurface of West Chicago from Garfield Street to Route 83.
All right.
Yeah, so it's not a full reconstruction.
We're not reconstructing that because the cost of that project would be 3-4 times what we have budgeted if we reconstructed it. And it really doesn't need to be reconstructed at this time. A resurface only is warranted for that section of road.
This is Dan Dieter.
Sorry, go ahead, Dan.
We've been doing water main work on there, and I'm measuring the pavement that's out there on West Chicago, and it's right now we're finding it's 3 or 4 inches of bituminous over the 7 inches of concrete that was originally constructed on that. So it is a concrete street. It's just that the concrete was in such poor condition that originally they put bituminous surface over it for better travel.
Let me just say another thing, going back to 7th Street is, or, you know, our new plan when we did Washington and Lincoln and Vine, and George, you can pipe in here, but I think we're putting down a more substantive base under that than is under a lot of streets. So it's asphalt, but asphalt with a superior base. Is that right, George or Dan? And I'm not trying to sell one way or the other. I'd love it to be concrete.
Yes, we've increased our sub base back to withhold a certain amount of traffic. Dan, did you want to get into a little bit more specific about the sub base of those roads?
Yes, in either the bituminous or the concrete designs, they found that there was, as you can see right now, the subgrade is in poor condition. So what we're doing is a subgrade treatment where we mix in Portland cement about the top foot of the subgrade in order to stiffen that up so that we don't have the settlement that the road has shown in the past. So that'll greatly increase the strength of the asphalt road. And
all right, I think we got most of that. Let me just voice, because I on 8th Street, net, I think I tilt toward asphalt. But I'd like to flesh this out because we're starting to hammer out how we think about this. So the other thing that relates to the traffic and the wear and tear, and therefore the frequency with which we're going to have to resurface and eventually reconstruct, is the level of disruption when we do have to resurface or reconstruct. And so, to me, one of the reasons to really try to get this right is Garfield feels like we made mistakes, and we don't want to make those mistakes again. County Line, to a certain extent, feels like we made some mistakes, and next time we want to do it better. And so the one thing that I think of that doesn't show up in the numbers is that every time we have to, resurface or reconstruct, it is very disruptive, and the more traffic that those roads face, the more disruptive it is, because then we start to send that traffic all over town. So I do think that we'll face situations where it may not be such a close call from a numbers point of view, but if we factor in that disruption, it might tilt us in favor of wanting to do concrete if we have situations where we have lots of traffic.
So Dan, can you come back online?
yes,
Am I, correct me if I'm wrong, but if you do 8th Street and asphalt and versus concrete, on either scenario, you basically wouldn't have to touch the road for 15 years. Am I right or wrong about that?
you're correct.
Okay. And am I right or wrong about the fact that the level of car traffic is less important than the level of truck traffic in determining the degradation of a road over time?
Yes.
Okay. So when we talk about here, after 15 years, we're going to have to do $237,000 worth of work on the asphalt versus $50,000 on the concrete. Going to Jerry's point, if you had concrete and you did $50,000 of work, would you have to shut down the road for any meaningful time when you did that work in 15 years?
You may be, it would be less of a shutdown. You were probably shutting down sections of the road to patch those sections that are in poor shape.
And you patch them in concrete?
You'd patch them in concrete. They'd have to cure for at least 2 weeks. The bituminous, of course, we just grind off and overlay, which residents can have access to throughout most of the construction process to their streets.
Yeah. Okay.
And what about potholes? Wouldn't those have to be dealt with more frequently than 15 years?
Yes, that was, Dan, would there be, is that, when we talk about the way this chart is, I'm just wondering if this chart is an oversimplification. We talk about 15 years out, $237,000. between year 1 and year 15, with the sub base that you're talking about, would there be any maintenance? Would we have to fix potholes? Would we have to do anything during that period of time that would cause the road to be shut down?
Certainly, there could be some crack sealing. There could be some pothole patching. I mean, those are temporary closures during the day, and aren't any kind of a permanent obstruction for the residents.
Okay. And by contrast, if you did it in concrete, you'd have no maintenance whatsoever for 15 years. Is that fair?
Pretty much, yes.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Except for if you have a water main break underneath it, and then you have to cut through the concrete, and that's more of a major repair.
Yeah. And now let's talk about that for a moment. How likely is that? How often do we have to tear up a road to fix a water main? Is that something we should think about when we're deciding what surface to put on?
Like, George, do you have the number of water main breaks from last year?
Throughout the whole village, we range from 30 to 40 breaks a year throughout the entire village. So, I mean, it all depends on the winter, but we're averaging somewhere between 30 and 40 main breaks throughout the village over.
But I
over
guess
the
my
years.
question, George, is if we do this street in concrete, are we looking at a potential high cost for having to tear up a concrete street to fix a water main break that we wouldn't have to worry about if we did it in asphalt? Is that a realistic issue?
It would be something where we would saw cut the road, we would dig up the main, clamp it, and then Public Works would probably patch it ourselves, or we would have a contractor do a small patch. It would be something that we would be able to contain within our budget, or our operation and maintenance budget, without any significant overage.
Okay.
And won't it be a new water main going in underneath 8th Street?
We're only doing a small section of water main there. We're not doing the whole length of the block.
Okay.
George, is there any sewer work in that area?
It is a
The sewer
combined
separation
sewer
area?
area, but we're not doing any separation or anything like that. What's driving this project mostly has to do with pavement improvements.
Right. But I mean, is there any sewer separation down the road that we have to?
There's nothing planned there right now. No.
Well, right
But
now is right.
don't we have to eventually separate all of our sewers? So when would 8th Street be planned to have that done? Do you know?
It's nowhere within the next 5 years that we have a plan for it. The other thing we were trying to do was control the costs of the project as well. So we didn't get into a full utility upgrade for that whole area. What was driving it was the pavement.
But I mean, Laurel's right. I mean, aren't we under some mandate to separate all the sewers by some date certain?
We're not under a mandate to separate all the sewers. Originally, when we put our proposal together, it was to separate enough sewers that we met the US EPA requirement to have only 4 combined sewer overflows a year.
Okay, well, let me put it differently. What is the probability in the next 45 years we're going to have to tear up 8th Street to separate the sewers? Is that a realistic possibility?
Very low, because the sewers downstream of that are owned by Flag Creek Water Reclamation District, and they don't have any plans in separating those. It actually goes out to 55th Street, and they're just running out of real estate underneath 55th Street to separate that combined sewer.
Okay.
Okay. Well, I guess I would echo some of what Matt said, in that I think in terms of people driving through Hinsdale, 8th Street is really kind of a major cross street, and people take it all the time in order to avoid 55th Street, in order to not have to wait at the lights at County Line or Garfield or Grant or Madison. And so people are on 8th Street, like that's the go-to street. It's not 6th. So in terms of getting across town, it's a more significant artery, I think, than one would think. I kind of think of Hickory in the same way.
Maybe the lane,
I'm sorry.
the lane maybe too. No, Hickory goes all the way across. You're right, Stow to, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and really, well, I don't know. I could even see 8th Street eventually being concrete all the way through past Monroe, you know, because it's so, people use it so much. I know we're only talking about the portion from Garfield to County Line right now.
We did West 8th Street about 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah, so that's not coming up for a while.
Yeah,
but
the 10 years, I hope.
right.
But you're right. I mean, that's a big cut through. People come up Stow, and we call it the 8th Street Expressway in this neighborhood. People really zipped on it.
And even with the stop signs on it, it's still faster and more reliable than going over to 55th Street to, you know, and chancing the stoplights. So to me, in terms of usage, it's worthwhile to at least be considering doing it in concrete, because it just gets heavy usage, and redoing it, as Jerry was saying, is disruptive. And but I can certainly appreciate the, you know, the recognition that $192,000 available this year, that immediate savings, is meaningful. So,
I mean, maybe by for the next 2 weeks, we can, you know, I'd call on staff to look at the dollars, and, you know, I think we'd like to do concrete, but, you know, we just have to feel good about it. You know, it's like when you make an expensive purchase at the home or something, you know, you have to kind of rationalize it somehow in your mind. You ever had to do that, Laura?
So
Hey,
Scott,
Neil?
Yeah.
Do we know why the construction observation costs are 70% higher for concrete versus
Asphalt?
blacktop? Yeah.
Yeah, I don't, but George does.
Okay.
George or Dan?
Dan can chime in, but two major reasons drive it is, one is the method. Concrete is a little bit longer of a process where you have to construct the road in 2 halves. And then there was some additional material oversight and testing included in the concrete process that added some engineering costs as well.
George,
Yeah,
do you know
to,
about how much longer is it to do concrete?
There's a longer curing process for each section, so it may add several weeks to the project.
I remember we did right in front of the pool that concrete project took a long time to complete.
Right, because you're installing it, and then there's a
Yeah.
2-week cure time where you can't drive on it, and then you have to wait before the other half can get built. So it's a longer process, which drives up your engineering costs.
I think they were looking for an additional 5 weeks at least of curing time.
Scott, I think you're the only one we haven't heard from on this.
Yeah, I mean, to me, this is more a decision of, you know, what's the most fiscally responsible move as it relates to this particular decision. On the one hand, I see the argument where we have longevity, we've got return on investment, we've got a 50-year, you know, 15 to 30 to 45-year payback by doing concrete. But at the same time, you know, we're coming off the heels of a pandemic. You know, we're in a situation where we have, you know, potentially a tenuous situation from a revenue perspective, and to me that weighs heavily on my mind just because of the events that we're contending with right now. And so, if we weren't coming off of a pandemic, I'd probably leaning towards concrete. But given the fact that, you know, our financial situation is a little bit unknown right now, I'm leaning towards doing the asphalt. So, I mean, to me, maybe that's too simplistic, but that's how I look at it.
So Neil, do you want to just to kick this to the second read to reach a final decision?
I think we should, yeah. And, you know, they just kind of look at the dollars some more and see if we think about the sewers and just kind of review that a little bit, I think.
Okay. Anybody else have anything they want to add on this before we put it off till next meeting?
Well, yeah, I'll just summarize. I think we should do it in asphalt. I'm just going to put it out there to put it out there. And the reason I don't think it's be 15 years. I think this is like a 20 plus year thing. We used 15 years as an average, rule of thumb for
Right.
kind of budgeting purposes. But we know that if there's a wide range, and that may be average, this feels like a street that's going to last longer than that. And so if we're looking at 20-year cycles instead of 15, I think that just further diminishes the advantages of concrete. I do want to say, when we make investments today that reduce maintenance requirements in the future, we are building financial flexibility for the village. We've seen the reverse when we didn't make the investments and things started to fall apart, and we created a lot of financial pressure. And so little decisions, accumulate where if we're making it easier in the future, I think that's a good thing. But, so I think that's really, really important. But in this case, again, I think these are 20-year cycles. And so I think that tips it.
But also the 192,000 we save is going to go into other infrastructure. So that, that kind of is an investment in the future. It would be different if we took the 192,000 at a party or something. And this is going to go into some other road, or some other infrastructure project, or some other water main.
Garfield.
Yeah. So, I think that, that investing in the future, I think that's right. And I think that concrete is always a better investment, all else being equal, but it's not as though this money is going to something other than roads and sewers. Anybody else? So let's put it off. You may change your mind. It may, we may come back and people feel differently about it. As I said, I think it's a close enough call that it's worth some good discussion. I think we had a good discussion.
Yeah, good discussion. Very good.
Yeah. Okay, we'll put it off, put it on a second read, and we'll yet to be decided the building material. Luke? You're on mute.
Sorry about that. This brings us to agenda items 7E and 7F. Both of these items are first reads and both pertain to phase 2 of the renovation and expansion of the Hinsdale Central High School, which is located at 5500 South Grant Street, which is in the IB district. These improvements include a 1-story, 10,300 square foot fine arts addition and entry plaza on the east elevation facing Grant Street, a 2-story, 20,710 square foot student service and special education addition, which is within the existing building courtyard, replacement of the west side football field grandstand and press box, a ticket booth building for the football field, the varsity baseball field backstop replacement, the junior varsity softball field backstop and fence replacement, the junior varsity baseball field outfield fence installation, and parking lot lighting. I'm first going to summarize the variation request, and then secondly, the site plan and exterior appearance review. I'm discussing these collectively tonight because I think they're very intertwined. However, when we vote on these next week or in 2 weeks, we'll discuss each independently. I would also note that we have the school's architect here to provide a summary and answer any questions. With regard to the variation request, on January 20th, the ZBA held a public hearing on the requested variations, and it approved a variation relating to section 7-310 and 9-107H2 and 3 of our village code to allow for the construction of a grandstand and press box structure which exceed the height limitations within the corner side yard setbacks, as well as the screening and buffering variations. I would note these variations were approved by the ZBA, and the ZBA has final approval on those and full authority, so we are not considering those tonight. I would also note, just for the board's understanding, is that the new press box and grandstand or bleachers will not be any closer or any taller than the existing grandstand, bleachers, and press box that are currently there. In addition to the variation for the grandstand and press box, the applicant has requested 5 variations for which the ZBA does not have final authority. And that's why these requests are in front of us this evening. The ZBA has, however, reviewed these 5 variation requests and has unanimously recommended approval by this board. These variation requests are applicable to the following sections of the code and include number 1, section 912(3) D and E, to allow for the partial replacement of the existing perimeter chain link fencing around the grandstand and press box structure with chain link fencing similar to what's currently in place. So as you know, our code does not permit chain link fencing within the village, but they're asking for it here for security purposes, so it doesn't block sight lines. And also, it's not going to be any different than what has been there for the past several years. Number 2, section 7310 to allow the construction of an accessory structure, which is the ticket booth of a height of 17 feet versus 15 feet, which is permitted by code. So they're looking for an additional 2 feet for the ticket booth. Then number 3, section 912(3) D and E, which is again regarding the fencing material and height. They want to allow for the replacement of the existing chain link fence backstop around the Varsity baseball field with the installation of safety netting and poles 40 feet in height. If you recall, when we approved phase 1, we did have some discussion with regard to the placement of the netting down the right and left field side. So that's something we should look at closely here tonight. Number 4, section 912(3) D and E regarding fence material and height again. This would be black coated vinyl chain link fencing at the junior varsity baseball field. Also the installation of the black coated chain link fencing and 23-foot hooded backstop at the junior varsity softball field, and the installation of the black chain link fencing at the varsity baseball field. So what we have here, just in quick summary, is they're looking to replace the existing chain link fencing. Since it is not permitted by code, they have to get the variation request. And then lastly, section 3-10 to install 2 parking lot light fixtures at a height of 27.5 feet versus code, which provides for 15 feet. They're looking at this because these are an additional 2 lights to the existing parking lot, which already has several lights that are 27.5 feet tall. So these additional 2 lights would simply be at the same height of the existing lights. They have done an illumination test, and it meets all of the requirements with regards to illumination at the property lines. I would direct the board that standards for granting variances are outlined in section 11-503F of the code. So with that, moving very quickly then on to exterior appearance and site plan, I would like the applicant's representative who is here this evening to run through a summary of the site plan. And then I would also note that the Plan Commission has reviewed the site plan and exterior appearance, and it voted 8-0 to recommend approval to this board. So with that, I would open it up to before we do that, are there any questions at this point from trustees or President Call?
Luke,
has some of this stuff been done already, completed? I don't believe so, or in process. I would direct that to the applicant.
Okay.
Do we have a representative from the applicant that's available here?
Good evening, board. This is Nick Grail with Archon and Associates. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Very good.
Yes, to answer your question, this is phase 2 of the referendum project. So phase 1, which was approved last year, has been under construction. But phase 2 has not started yet on the exterior here. Waiting for approvals, obviously, for the board. So we are looking to start very soon here in the late spring, as soon as we can. So as far as what we're coming to the board today, these projects have not started yet on the site.
Okay. So I saw the new stuff in the soccer field. I guess that's new ticket office and everything, but that was already in phase 1, right?
That was phase 1 construction.
Okay, good. All right. Thank you. Sorry.
Yep. Is it possible that I could share my screen?
Brad, can you facilitate that?
Yep, go ahead.
Okay, on my end here, it doesn't give me the option. It's just a participant.
Can you give me the option, Brad? I think you control that.
Yep, hold on a second.
In the meantime, just some higher level points. Our goal throughout this entire process. Okay, I got the request here.
Okay.
Excellent.
All right.
All right, can everybody see my screen, site plan up there?
Yes.
Okay. So, our goal is really two things, to match the existing conditions with appropriate upgrades to today's standards. And all work that we're doing in phase 2 is to match what was previously approved in phase 1. So we're not looking to, do anything different. It's all more or less the same based on those two. I'll quickly go through an overview here, and then we can certainly answer, go into more details with any questions the board has. Just because it's a little easier for me, I'll go from left to right on the site plan here with the points previously discussed. So here on the west side of the football field, varsity football field, we are proposing as close to 1-for-1 bleacher and press box replacement as we can get, again, with upgrades for today's standards for accessibility, where there's no accessible seating there currently. So the goal here was to add that accessible seating and provide a press box size that's more appropriate to today's standards and for the school. Again, with being very cognizant that these new grandstands wouldn't be any taller than what's there currently. We're actually lower, which is a good thing. And we're not encroaching any further to the property line than what's currently there. Moving on, more central to the athletic fields between the tennis courts and practice fields that we did last summer with phase 1. We're requesting a ticket booth structure be built. We are requesting variation there for the height, and the main reason there, we're trying to match the aesthetics of the Huddle House. So the Huddle House has certain peaked roofs that we're trying to emulate here at the ticket booth. Just as you read the plans, anything in this peach color is the additions that are proposed. Anything that's in the blue color is site renovation. So be it pavement replacements, resurfacing, redoing of the courtyard due to the additions that we're putting there, or new plaza here off of Fine Arts. Moving on, the varsity baseball field here, we are looking at replacing the backstop only on this field. It's currently a chain link backstop. We want to upgrade that to masonry knee wall with safety netting, which is very similar to the backstops we installed last summer at the JV field here off of 57 and Grand, and is also matching the aesthetics of the varsity softball field to the north off of 55th Street. Moving on to the courtyard. So obviously we're running out of room out of the sites to build more additions. We got the phase 1 pool building here. It's under construction now, should be complete early this summer. We have a student service and special education addition. So within the courtyard here, we're putting on the first floor. There's offices for student services. And on the second floor will be classrooms and office space for special education. Moving further to the east, we have our fine arts edition. So brand new band room, practice rooms, entrance lobby. There's an associated plaza with that. The reason for that plaza, the first floor level is elevated in what was the buildings and grounds loading dock area. If you recall from last summer, we renovated and provided an addition to create a new buildings and grounds loading dock here in the south lot off of Grant Street. So now that they're moved out, we're coming back in for this school space. So there is a plaza out front to kind of welcome people into that addition. And it will be one of the main entrances for students because student parking is kind of off here off of Grant Street. It will be one of the main entrances for students as they come in and park for the day. Junior varsity baseball field. So this was the field, we replaced the basket stop with safety netting. We provided safety netting off of 57th Street and Grant Street to protect the public right-of-way and houses across the street. We are proposing a chain link fence out here in the outfield to match the rest of our athletic fences to protect the field of play from phase 2. We have to install a flat bottom drainage basin. So to protect that village required drainage area, we need to provide fencing so players don't, if they're looking to run and get a foul ball, try to stop a home run, that they don't go actually into the basin.
And Nicholas, so that's a new chain link fence?
Correct. This would be new.
Okay. And are there any other new chain link fences?
There will be a 1-for-1 replacement chain link just to the north of this lot for the junior varsity softball field. So here we have an existing field that's got chain link backstop and baseline fences. We're looking at replacing that 1-to-1 with chain link. It was mentioned we're proposing 2 new parking lot fixtures here in this south lot off of Grant Street. If everyone recalls, this south lot was part of phase 1 approvals, but at that time we did not have parking lot lighting. So we're looking to install the parking lot lighting here in phase 2 to match the heights of the 4 poles we have just north to the existing lot here. Any questions so far?
I think so.
Okay. I can hit some high points for the group here, just looking at a little more detail. So grandstands and press box section, as I had mentioned, the existing top of press box roof is at 23 feet 6 inches approximately, and our proposed structure is at 22 feet 9 inches. So it is lower, not by much, but we were able to reduce the height here, which helps incrementally with sight lines for the residences across the street. Existing seating capacity. So like I said, we were really trying to go for a 1-for-1 replacement with upgrades for ADA. So if you notice here, the existing seat capacity on this side of the field is 2,402 seats. It is not accessible. With our proposed layouts, we are looking at a total of 2,409 seats, and that does include 22 accessible seating. So we're vastly improving this. We're providing ramps to get up there, and we're only increasing the capacity by 7 persons total. We're trying very hard to be good neighbors and going for a 1-for-1 replacement. Ticket booth structure. Again, we're trying to match that Huddle House south of the football field. It's a red brick structure with some white accents, red shingle roof. Again, with shed type roof here with the gables. So baseball field, again, we're only looking at the backstops here. The outfield is in decent shape. So that is not being proposed currently. It's just the backstop. Again, we're looking to match existing conditions with a masonry knee wall and safety netting that comes to about 40 feet in height, which is very similar to what was proposed during phase one.
Nicholas,
Okay,
is that
the court,
I'm sorry, is that a black safety netting?
yes, it is. It's gonna be identical to what was installed in phase one. So it's I believe black poles with black netting, and really it's you know, a lot less visual impact than the chain link fence. So it will match exactly to what we installed last summer. Is what we're proposing.
Thank you.
Within the courtyard, so we're going to be tearing this courtyard up. That's why we have a new plaza situation and pathways, some revised landscaping here for that student service and special education addition. As far as aesthetic goes, we're trying to match what we did in phase one. So we have this buff color brick, aluminum curtain wall systems. It's a pretty simple courtyard addition. A little bit of metal panels here, some accents, some louvers here on the south facades for light control and heat control during the summer. We'd be using the same brick that we're using currently. It was installed with the Buildings and Grounds Link Edition and the pool edition, and that brick is, the pool edition is just about complete, if not 75 to 85% complete. So if you wanted to see what that brick looks like, you can just do a drive-by. Again, we needed to make up the elevational difference for the top of first floor, so we are proposing this entry plaza. It's a nice upgrade and feature to what's there currently. It's really intended as a multi-use space. There's the potential that the fine arts program can have some outdoor small concerts here. Student gathering before and after school, waiting for buses. School will probably potentially use this space during the school day as well. So it's a really multi-use extra outdoor area that the school doesn't currently have, that they're very happy for the potential to get that. And just looking here, again, matching the aesthetics we have in place, buff color brick to match up with existing and what we've done in phase one. White metal panel canopies, covered column structures here, curtain wall glazing, really brightens up the interior lobby of this space, bringing the outside in with that plaza. Photometrics have been included for not only the parking lot light fixtures that were discussed just off a grant, but we are proposing some pathway lighting within this plaza, and those photometrics have been included so we don't exceed code requirements. So I think that hits some detail. Happy to answer any further questions from the board.
The only other point I would make for trustees is during the public hearing and during the plan commission meeting for the site plan and exterior appearance, there were no comments from any residents or neighbors.
You should probably check Luke to see if anybody's on now.
Yep. If there is anyone on that would like to speak with regards to the request from the high school, now is the time. Hearing none, I would open up to questions from trustees and President Colley.
Questions from me? It looks good.
Yeah, I think so too. I think, the by far the majority of these variation requests go simply for replacing things that were previously non-conforming, and I think they've done a decent job of actually minimizing what was there before. So with that, so this will move on for a second read in 2 weeks. At this, and we'll consider both the variations and the site plan and exterior appearance review separately. For the applicant's representative here, since we are doing this remotely, I would suggest you do call in for this, just because this is a big project, and in case there are any questions from residents.
Will do. Happy to. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, which moves us on to agenda item 7G, which is also a first read, and it's a variance request at 33 South Garfield Street. The applicant is requesting relief from section 6.111F of the code, which is total lot coverage area. Code provides for 80%, and the applicant is requesting 86.3% in the O1 district. I think it's important to note that there is nothing that has changed at this property. The existing building is 118 years old and was constructed before our code. The tenants in the property, which are office tenants, will remain the same. Rather, approval of this variance will simply move this property from an illegal non-conforming property to a legal non-conforming property. The property was previously residential, and the previous owner at some point in the past converted it from residential to office, which is permitted in the O1, but the previous owner did not get the necessary approvals. The new owner, which just recently acquired the property, simply wants to ensure that it has all legal approvals, including this variance and any building code upgrades, which will be finished after this approval. I think it's also important to note that the ZBA has heard this matter on February 17th, and it voted unanimously 7-0 to recommend to this board approval of the variance. There were no residents at the public hearings that opposed the request, and neighbors on both sides, to the north and to the south of the property, submitted letters in support of the request. So with that, I know that we do have a person on representing the applicant. I would open up to him or her at this time.
Hi, thank you. Good evening. My name is Jamie Zara. Last name is Zaura, for the record, and I'm the architect for 33 South Garfield. Lorraine Flynn, one of the owners, is also on the call and available to answer any questions, but that was a great summary of what happened at the zoning board. The reason we're here tonight is, as it was stated, the property was purchased in December of 2020, and the property was non-conforming. We requested 2 variances from the zoning board, and one was to reduce parking, and that was unanimously approved. And the other request was why we're here tonight, for the existing lot coverage, because we do not meet the village's requirements of 80%. As it was stated, the building is over 118 years old, and it's currently utilized as an office. The tenants of the main building are attorneys, investment brokers, and a naturopath, and that will remain as is. The accessory structure on the property was one time a barn and converted decades ago into a residence, and this structure will remain as a single family residence to be used as the current owners. The property is 6,668 square feet in the O1 district. And I'd like to state that there are some properties in this district that are double the lot size. For instance, 115 South Vine is another property in O1 and has lots, the lot coverage is 11,000 square feet, and it has the same zoning requirements. This property has a unique physical condition due to the size. The lot is only 50 feet wide, and again is 6,668 square feet. The main building on the site was built over a century ago, again, prior to the zoning code requirements. And the restructure was built, we believe, at the same time. So in regards to the lot coverage, the property exceeds the allowable 80% maximum lot coverage, and it's 86.3% of the property is impervious. Again, due to the size of the lot. If this lot was similar to the size of the property, as I mentioned on Vine, this would not be an issue. Per the standards for a variation, if this variance is not approved, the owners would be denied the right to utilize this property as others in the O1 district currently do. This includes their neighbors to the north and south of 33 South Garfield. The owners of this property have a hardship that was not created by them. These requests for variations are intended, again, to lawfully convert the existing house into an office building as permitted into O1. The character of the building will remain unaffected by the variance approval, and the property will be allowed to conform with the village code. As it was stated, myself and the owners have spoken to the neighbors directly north and south of the property at 35 and 27 South Garfield. Both owners have provided letters in favor and that have submitted to the village. So if there's any other questions, I or Lorraine would be happy to answer them about the property.
Is there anybody else on the line besides the owner who wants to speak to this? Any of the neighbors on the line?
One thing I would note for the board here, obviously a historic home, 118 years old. As we've discussed at this board many, many times, I don't think there's going to be any problems with this, but this is variations of this type are exactly what we should be doing in order to preserve these types of buildings.
Agreed.
With that, I'll open it up one more time for questions, comments from trustees. Okay, hearing none. Both Jamie and Lorraine, this will be voted on at the second meeting and at the second read in 2 weeks. At this point, unless you hear from Rob McGinnis, I don't think it's necessary for you to attend that. I think we should be good.
Okay, thank you all.
Thank
And
you
good
very
luck
much.
for those that are running for re-election.
Thank you. Okay, that takes us to accounts payable. Who had that?
Oh, my apologies, I had that. So this was a small month for the accounts payable. I would note that it was also the first month that we had it with our new finance director. I found everything, we looked at it very, very closely, so thank you, Allison, but I found everything to be in very good order. As such, I would approve payment of the accounts payable for the period of March 15th through 2021 through April 2nd of 2021, in the aggregate amount of $550,674.04, which is set forth in a list provided by the village treasurer, of which a permanent copy is on file with the village clerk.
Second.
Roll call vote.
Trustee Postuma,
Aye.
Trustee Banky,
Aye.
Trustee Stifler,
Aye.
Trustee Hughes.
Aye.
Trustee Harlow,
Aye.
Trustee Burns.
Aye.
That takes us to the consent agenda items 8B through 8F. Can I have a motion with respect to those items?
Move to approve consent agenda items 8B through 8F.
Second.
Roll call vote.
Trustee Postuma,
Aye.
Trustee Banky,
Aye.
Trustee Stifler,
Aye.
Trustee Hughes,
Aye.
Trustee Harlow,
I think you're on mute, Laurel.
Trustee Harlow, are you there?
Thumbs up probably won't do it, huh, Chris?
Yeah, I don't know if you do a thumbs up on a board meeting.
Okay, in the meantime,
There she goes.
Trustee
We got it.
Burns.
We got it. I will see that, affirm that she's.
They're all in the affirmative now.
Aye. Aye then.
Thank you.
Okay, Jerry. Last item.
Yes. Yeah, so 9A is, so second read, we discussed this at the last meeting. This is just amending the liquor ordinance to increase the number of licenses for package sales at a restaurant before to accommodate the request from the bookie. we discussed. So I will move to approve an ordinance amending subsection 3-3-13A of the Village Code of Hinsdale related to the number of liquor licenses.
Second.
Any further discussion? Roll call vote?
Trustee Postuma,
Aye.
trustee Banky,
Aye.
trustee Stifler.
Aye.
Trustee Hughes,
Aye.
trustee Harlow,
Aye.
trustee Burns.
Aye.
Okay, it takes us to discussion items. Tollway update, anything, Brad?
Nothing to report, President Cohen.
And there's another liquor license request for Yaya's Cafe at 13 Grant Square. I don't know if anybody from the restaurant is on, but I think we got the request in writing. Seems to me to be another restaurant wanting a liquor license, no different from other restaurants for which we've given liquor license. So,
I do believe we have the applicant.
okay. Is the applicant on?
Is on mute?
Oh, you unmute your line? I assume it's Demetrius in the corner there.
Yeah, I'm the owner of Yaya's Hinsdale, and I'm just, it's just the pandemic and everything going on. We need to find other, ways to increase revenue, and it's just something that's been asked for several times, by many of our customers for like mimosas, Bloody Marys. So it's kind of the reason that we're applying for the liquor license.
Yeah. Anybody see any reason why we shouldn't? No, seems like a reasonable request. Other restaurants have liquor licenses, so there's no reason you shouldn't.
Correct.
Okay, and what's the process for that, Kathleen? We just put it on the agenda for next time to increase the number? All right.
Sorry, yes.
Okay. Thank you. It's a go.
Thanks, guys.
So that takes us to staff reports. Any of the report, Kathleen?
I just wanted to give a general update. There was some communication with the board and from the community regarding tracking 5G legislation. And I just want the board and the community to be aware that the staff is tracking that legislation. We're working with the DuPage Mayors and Managers Conference on that to address the concerns that the residents and the board might have, focusing mostly on the local control aspect of it.
Okay. Anything else from the staff? No? Trustee comments? Any trustee comments?
Yep.
Citizens, good.
Oh, no, sorry to disrupt you.
Oh, no, fine.
I just want to point out, I don't know if people have been following the news, but the names in Springfield may change, but the playbook remains the same. So I just want to call out that there was yet another unfunded mandate for a pension benefit increase signed yesterday or the day before by Governor Pritzker, which increases retroactively benefits for firefighter pensions. And regardless, it may be a good thing or not a good thing, but I think it was, I suspect no one called Kathleen you or.
It's the first I heard about it. Thanks for bringing it to our attention.
Or let anyone know that this was coming. I'm not often in a position, I think, where I would wholeheartedly echo a statement from Mayor Lightfoot, but one of her quotes was that this bill is fiscally irresponsible and validates a Springfield practice of cutting backroom deals without full transparency and debate. And so I just want to point out for those who follow this and who are listening that we have underfunded pensions for police and fire. One of the biggest reasons is that there's been years of this type of thing happening where instantly our liability goes up and of course our assets remain the same. And so, one of the things I know kind of catching up on this is that we never tracked it. So, we can't point to the amount by which the unfunded portion is due to this. But maybe we could start to pick it up. So I don't know, Kathleen or Allison, I won't be around when we update the, we do the audit of the pension accounts, but if we can ask our pension auditor to estimate the degree to which our liability went up for this one, that would be a good thing to take note of and start tracking going forward.
And to that point, Jerry, I think that 15 or 20 years ago, most municipalities were fully funded. And it was a series of backroom deals in Springfield designed to garner union votes and that resulted in unfunded mandates for pension that put just about every municipality in a position where it was underfunded. And it's not the fault of village governments, it's the fault of Springfield. They have done this again and again and again. And I congratulate Mayor Lightfoot for pointing it out, but they are fiscally irresponsible as no other state is. And if you look at any metric, which Wall Street Journal often follows, that we are the worst state for fiscal responsibility by far. And we're a big industrial state. And it's appalling what I've seen happen in the last 12 years from our state government. It's reprehensible.
So Trustee Hughes, I've gotten information from our staff that this may only be applicable to the city of Chicago. I did read something briefly, come across one of my emails. So we will look into it and submit a memo to the board confirming who it's applicable to, whether it's just the city of Chicago or the rest of the downstate pensions.
Chicago, it affects us all, nevertheless, but most of the time these things do affect all the communities. Thanks, Jerry.
Yep.
Anything else? Any trustee? Okay, any citizens on, Brad?
Nobody on, President Tully.
Okay. All right, can I have a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Roll call vote?
Trustee Postuma,
Aye.
Trustee Banky,
Aye.
Trustee Stifler,
Aye.
Trustee Hughes,
Aye.
Trustee Harlow,
Aye.
Trustee Burns.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
Thank you.
Take care.